I start, I just want to make sure, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Who said no? So, when I was 18 years old, I got to spend a gap year in Jerusalem. I was at an Orthodox women's yeshiva called Bravenders, Midrashet Lindenbaum. The year was 1990-91, the year Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. In January, the U.S. led a coalition of 42 countries invading Iraq. It was a devastating war for everyone on the ground. And in the midst of that violence, Saddam began lobbing missiles at Israel. Israel had nothing to do with the conflict, not part of the 42-country coalition, but many Arab and other Muslim-majority countries were. And Saddam figured if he could draw Israel into this conflict, he might be able to push his Muslim brothers out. Fortunately, Israel did not take the bait. I don't know what would have happened if those Scud missiles had been more effective or if the Patriot missiles had been less so. We're fixing my...
Pardon the noise.
I asked. Is that better?
It is believed that this will be better.
Okay. Sorry about that. Am I good now? All right. So I was saying I don't know what would have happened if the Scuds had been more effective, if the Patriots less so. Fortunately, they weren't. I do know that people were scared. We believed the reports of weapons of mass destruction. Our dorm emptied out. Most of the girls went back to the U.S. And what had once been a very crowded dorm building suddenly felt very spacious and lonely. And each of us who remained was issued this big black rubbery gas mask. My bedroom was on a high floor, so it was designated as a sealed room, which just meant that we covered the windows with this thick plastic wrap and tape. And when the war sirens went off, we all crowded in. We would sit there trapped and scared, just listening for a sound of a boom out there. That shrill, piercing sound of the war sirens is embedded now in my bones. Even when it's obviously just a recording, that sound always provokes this little twist of dread inside of me. And I never saw any violence. We just huddled in our sealed room, afraid but totally untouched. So what does that sound do to people who have survived the full violence of war? This has been a year of war sirens. In Israel, actual sirens, constantly, all the time. And this is a nation in which practically every person is carrying the psychological scars of past wars. It's been a year of funerals and military drafts and racing to the shelters with that haunting cry of the sirens spurring people on. For us here in America, the experience has been more subtle, but it's been a subtlety that warps the mind and the heart in its own way. Of course, no actual war sirens and really minimal physical violence. And honestly, I'd feel wrong even making a comparison, except that numerous Israelis have told me that they are worried for our welfare. They over there are worried for us, which is really kind of sweet. So let's be honest. For us, it's been a year of rage and terror and helplessness and shame and despair, though we have not endured sirens. But we have endured slogans, hateful tweets, and billboards, and banners and 2-minute public comments and thoughtless comments thrown out in conversation and shouted insults in public spaces. I don't know, does this sound kind of too metaphorical, comparing slogans to sirens? Because I actually think the impact on our brains may be similar. Slogans force our complicated, multifaceted minds down to a single channel. When you try to compress all of our complexity into 2 minutes, force each of us to fit into some narrow camp, the pressure of that constraint leaves us ready to burst. Are you with us or are you against us? Even when the question isn't explicit, we're just being driven by the zeitgeist of this time to feel this false binary. Are you pro-Israel or pro-Palestine? Are you Democratic or Republican? Are you Trump or Kamala? And you know, it's not just here in Israel and America. It's happening all around the world. People are being polarized by wars of slogans. Which side are you on? Great question for soccer or baseball. Not a way to run a world. I actually came up against that question explicitly last winter. It was the Redwood City Council meeting when they were considering that ceasefire resolution. And so many people turned out to speak that they had to provide overflow seating in the atrium. I was sitting there waiting for a seat to open in the main hall, and a young man must have seen my kippah because he came up to me, and he was wearing one of those bring them home dog tags that I wear all the time, but I think I was still wearing my jacket because he couldn't see it. And without bothering to introduce himself, he said in a very clear Israeli accent, I'm not good at accents, I won't fake it. He said, I just want to know, which side are you on? I hesitated. I don't think of it as sides, I said slowly, planning to elaborate. He cut me off. Okay, you've told me what I need to know. And he walked away. The exchange left me outraged. Almost, not quite, but almost as much as that obscenely one-sided ceasefire resolution. Choose a side, limit yourself. The pressure builds and we begin to shut down. Now, the Redwood City Council meeting was intense. The resolution was voted down 5-2, and that is thanks to a lot of relationship building work by a team of CBJ members and others in the Jewish community. I see some of you sitting here. That there was so much anger in City Hall that night. When it was finally over, we Jews had to be escorted to our cars by police because none of us felt safe. Still, Redwood City was a walk in the park compared to San Francisco. One of my closest friends is the rabbi of a congregation in the city, and she attended that meeting to speak out against their ceasefire resolution. And whenever a person tried to speak against the resolution, the crowd booed them down. A few people, this is horrible, a few people tried to describe the atrocities of October 7th and were drowned out by shouts of liar, liar. How is there any possibility of dialogue with people who deny basic facts? There was one man who shouted an obscenity every time a Jewish woman stood up to speak. And there was another man who was videotaping the whole thing with his cell phone. And my friend felt so threatened and particularly worried about what he was going to do with that cell phone footage. She sat down. She did not get up. She was online to speak, and she sat down. So yes, I believe that slogans can shut us down as surely as war sirens can. I think most of us know what a war siren sounds like. It's got this like rising sound, very mechanical, and then it holds for a bit, and then there's really eerie, jagged falling off, and then up and steady and down again. Oops. You were losing me, weren't you? It it's meant to be a frightening sound. Now, the all clear is the same set of sounds, but it only rises once. It holds the steady note for a long time, and then it falls off with that jagged, eerie sound. And in Jerusalem, the all clear is sounded every Friday evening at candle lighting time. It's meant to call us away from the aggravations of regular life. But as that all clear blast trails off into that jagged falling sound, it does not induce in me a feeling of peace. Isn't that kind of curious that the warning siren and the all clear siren are so similar? You'd think that in today's technological world, it would be possible to create some entirely different sound to announce that it's safe to come out, or at least to welcome Shabbat. But believe it or not, the custom actually has an ancient history. What was the war siren of biblical times? Shofar, that's right. Our ancestors would carry the shofar into battle to rally the troops and to provoke terror in the locals. But they would also blast the shofar to announce a ceasefire and to send everyone safely back to their homes. And the prophet Isaiah promised that someday a great shofar will sound to announce the arrival of the Messiah and usher in an era of peace and hope. And the Talmud prescribed that on Friday afternoons, in every place where Jews live, a community leader must sound 6 blasts on a shofar, announcing throughout town that it is time to let go of the week's work. But what sound could possibly be more triggering than an inanimate call announcing war? And yet this is the sound we use to set the tone for Shabbat. Isn't there something quintessentially Jewish in that? Our shofar announces both war and peace. Rosh Hashanah is a day of fear and trembling and apples dipped in honey. The Sukkah, fragility and protection. The charoset, the mortar of slavery and the sweetness of freedom. At a wedding, we break a glass, a symbol of mourning. And during a year of mourning, we recite a prayer that exalts the source of life. Today's assault of simple-minded slogans is stripping our Jewish souls. It leaves no space to live with both fear and hope, with both love and anger directed at the same source. Instead, anger shuts us down and fear drives out hope. It's been a hard year, and too many of us are imagining worse things on the horizon. But who of us dares to claim that we actually know the future? Whatever may or may not be ahead, we are here today. We are free to gather in this beautiful space, free to choose from an abundance of variety of apples dipped in all kinds of honey, free to speak our minds, no matter which side we are on or how complex our ideas. It is time to stop responding to the binary. It is time to open to the possibilities of a future that may be far more beautifully textured and broad than any of us can imagine. Limtzochen bamidbar, to find grace in the desolate wilderness, as Jan read so beautifully today. In the words of Isaiah, to enlarge the sides of our tent, to widen our hearts, to open our gates. I was blessed this summer to attend a conference for Jewish leaders at the Hartman Institute in Jerusalem. And there for the first time, I heard Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum teaching in person. I'd seen her online. It was wonderful to be in her presence. Rabbi Tamar is the spiritual leader of this incredibly innovative, warm, inclusive community in Jerusalem called Zion, which means Zion. And Rabbi Tamar loves Judaism. She loves Israel, and she loves humanity with a love that just spills forth from her. She shared with us that on October 13th, she had spent a very long day in the south of Israel supporting the refugees from the Gaza envelope. She came back to Jerusalem barely in time for Shabbat, looking bedraggled, tired, tear-streaked. And as she walked into the room for services, a little boy came up to her and tugged at her skirts and said, Rabbat Tamar, mutar achshav shetiyeh Shabbat ba'olam? Rabbi Tamar, is it allowed now for Shabbat to be in the world? She left us with that question for a few minutes. When she came back to it, her answer was gentle but firm. Shabbat is an expression of hope, she said. And all children deserve hope. Children in Israel, children in Gaza. I'm going to add now children in Lebanon. All children. And she will not let any terrorists take that away from us. She said the very creation of the world was an act of protest. Against the darkness and chaos, God declared, let there be light. To be Jewish is to stand amidst despair and to create moments of hope. Quoting Israeli writer David Grossman, Rabbat Tamar compared hope to a heavy anchor that we have to haul up and cast it into the future. And then through great effort, we use that anchor to pull a better future into our reality today. I will add that to be Jewish is to train ourselves through similarly hard effort to hear the sounds of peace, even in a war siren, even on October 7th. Rabbi Tamar told us that her community rents space in the same building complex as Hasidei Orloi, an ultra-Orthodox Hasidic group. And in normal times, let's just say these two communities do not pray together. But when those sirens went off, it was the middle of Simchat Torah services. They were all forced to crowd into the same shelter. And they were stuck there for hours. And so they prayed and they sang and they ate together. The diverse community of Zion with its woman rabbi and the ultra-Orthodox Hasidim of Orloi with their strimals and their long black coats. And she said, after that year of internal strife that Israel had just been through, and on the darkest day of recent Jewish history, those two communities experienced light and hope together in a bomb shelter. This summer, my own family spent 2 nights at a bed and breakfast in a remote town in Montana with a population that is actually smaller than the size of CBJ. Our first night there, we heard that awful sound, war sirens, dread in the pit of my stomach. But it was so incongruous, this quaint little street in Choctaw, Montana, surrounded by miles and miles and miles of cow pasture. I went downstairs to ask our host what the siren meant. He shrugged. Choctaw has a volunteer fire department, and the siren calls the volunteers out to duty. It was raining very heavily, and he thought the volunteers were needed for flood control. I heard some of you having the same reaction I did. A volunteer fire department. Amazing. The siren went off again the next night. But this time, I looked out into the dark, wet street, and instead of dread, I felt something else. Appreciation, gratitude. Someone was out there sounding the alarm to support their neighbors. Others were putting on boots to go out into the cold, wet night and lend a hand. An all-clear siren shouts the possibility of peace, if you can open your heart to it. But even a warning siren carries within those broken tones that hope, because it means that someone is out there to sound the alarm, that people are still looking out for each other. It means that we have, if only a wobbly platform, something on which to put our feet as we cast our anchor of hope into the future. One last little piece from Abat Tamar, a story of resisting the binary and opening ourselves to the possibilities of hope. In the weeks and months after October 7th, soldiers began returning from Gaza. Heroes, young people who were ready to sacrifice their lives. And whenever they come to Zion, Rabbi Tamar asked them if there's anything they want to pray for. And she said every single one has asked for a prayer for peace. But many soldiers do not return. And Rabbi Tamar spoke about one in particular, Ben Zusman, whose parents are her dear friends. And before Ben went off to war, he wrote, actually Rabbi Ezra alluded to this, he wrote what she called a will. Imagine a 20-year-old writing a will. It was a letter to his parents in which he told them that they must live and enjoy life. And so Ben's parents prepared a huge memorial gathering 30 days after his death. The room was filled with Israelis from all different communities. Shuli Rand performed. If you know who Shuli Rand is, he's this very popular Breslauer chassid with a long beard that's popular on Israeli radio. Lucy Harish, an Arab Israeli, spoke in honor of Ben about her vision of the state of Israel and reminded the room about the higher vision of Zionism. And Ben's father, Tzvi, spoke too. He lifted a beer in a toast because Ben loved beer. And he said, Ben commanded us to live and have joy, and so I want to say l'chaim. If Tzvi Zusman could find such joy and hope at the Shloshim Memorial for his son, how can we do any less? And so to each of you, at the start of this new year, I wish a l'chaim. Open your hearts to joy. Listen for the sounds of peace, even when they are hard to hear, and work to create hope for the possibilities in the year to come. Shana Tova and l'chaim.